The three selves inside you. Only one can end suffering. There are people who say that the idea of an independent self is the root of all evil. As long as you have the idea that you're somehow separate, that you're not totally dependent on everyone else, you're going to be selfish. You'll try to amass as much as you can for yourself and push other people away unless they can serve your selfish interests. But that's not always the case. When you realize that your true well-being lies in acting in skillful ways, acting on skillful intentions, then even if you have the idea of an independent self, you'll want to act on impulses for generosity, virtue, the desire to train the mind so that you can be truly happy. At the same time, you avoid a lot of the problems of the idea of an interdependent self. For instance, if everybody were interdependent, nobody could gain awakening through his or her own efforts. That would mean that the Buddha never gained awakening. We'd all have to gain awakening together. You know how long that would take. When the Buddha was asked whether the whole world would gain awakening, only half or a third, he refused to answer. Because it's going to depend on each one of us deciding independently that we want to take up the path and follow it all the way through. The idea of an independent self also has the advantage of reminding you that if you're going to look for goodness in the world, you can't always depend on it coming from outside. You want your goodness to come solidly from within, independent of the ups and downs of the world. After all, look at the world we live in. It's not 100% pure, not 100% compassionate. When you look at interdependent systems in the world, you can see that it's not the case that they're designed for the well-being of everyone. We're having a heat wave now. Someplace, somebody's having good weather. If we weren't having our heat wave, they wouldn't be having their good weather. There have been times in the past when we've had good weather that's caused other people to have bad weather. So it's not the case that interdependent systems are reliable. In fact, it's because they are unreliable that the Buddha said we've got to get out if we want to find a dependable happiness. Each of us has to make that decision for him or herself and follow the path him or herself. That means we have to learn how to make our goodness independent. It's a good practice when, for example, you're suffering from a disease and there are a lot of things you can't do. You can still think thoughts of goodwill. That way, the goodness and happiness of your mind don't have to depend on the health of your body. Think of the case of the Buddha. Devadatta had rolled a stone down a mountain trying to kill the Buddha. Fortunately, the stone crashed against a rocky promontory and so was diverted. But it broke into some slivers, and one of the slivers pierced the Buddha's foot. It was very painful. They were able to get the sliver out, and he had to lie down and rest. Mara came and taunted him, saying, "Hey, you sleepyhead, why are you moping here?" The Buddha said, "I'm not moping. I'm lying down with sympathy for all beings." That can mean two things. One is that he looked after himself so that he would be able to continue his work of teaching. But also, while he was lying there, he was thinking about all beings, not just thinking about himself. When you do that, it lifts the level of your mind. Remember the image of the salt crystal. If your mind is expansive, then whatever painful results you're experiencing from past karma will be greatly reduced. just as when you throw a salt crystal into a large river of water. Even though you've put some salt in the water, there's so much more water than there is salt that you can still drink the water and it won't taste salty at all. So look inside yourself for the sources of goodness. They're there. They start with the desire to find true happiness. Around that desire, you're going to develop a sense of self, and you'll find that your sense of self will start out with a lot of the bad habits of your old senses of self. Every becoming has a sense of self, or more accurately, 3 senses of self playing 3 roles. The first is the self as the agent who's going to do the work that needs to be done to find the happiness on which that particular state of becoming is centered, or the desire on which it's centered. Then there's the self as the consumer who's going to enjoy the results. Then there's the self who comments on how well the agent is doing its job, offering recommendations for how it might improve. We're still going to use those 3 senses of self as we practice, but we have to train them so that the self as the consumer raises its standards. The self as the agent gets more energetic and skilled, and the self as a commentator knows how to talk so as to spur the agent on to do good things. It'll have to offer criticisms when it's necessary, but not in such a way as to kill your motivation, because you've got to keep your desire to practice going strong. As long as you're working on concentration, there has to be the desire that acts as a center, as a kernel for the state of concentration, and you don't want to snuff that out. So you've got to train your inner critic to be a useful critic. You read so much about how you should try to get rid of the inner critic because it's toxic. But then, who's going to make recommendations? Who's going to be able to look at what you're doing and give suggestions? Teachers can't step into your mind and give suggestions. You've got to absorb their values and learn how to use them yourself. Think about the Buddha's way of teaching. There was instructing, but then there was also urging, rousing, encouraging, giving you energy. In fact, even when he talks about self, the self is its own mainstay. The self as its governing principle. It's what you might call the idea of self as a performative truth. Something that's meant to make you perform well, that rouses you, urges you on, that yes, you can do this, and yes, you'll benefit from it. And yes, you do have the resources inside. What have you got? The 3 kinds of fabrication. You're breathing, you're talking to yourself, you're dealing with perceptions and feelings. But you can learn how to do all 3 of those things in skillful ways. You keep on breathing, but now you breathe in different ways. You breathe with the whole body. You think of the breath energy coming in and out from different parts of the body. You explore the nature of the breath energy in the body as a whole. When the Buddha talks about the in and out breath, he doesn't classify it as a contact at the body. He classifies it as part of one of the properties in the body itself. So, the breath is already there. The air just comes in and goes out. That's what makes contact. But the breath energy in the body, which brings the air in and lets it out, is something you want to explore. And it has lots of potentials. The same with the way that you talk to yourself. You can talk to yourself in ways that destroy your desire to practice. But why would you want to do that? Your inner critic may be good at putting you down, but you have to ask the critic, what does the critic get out of this? Who's benefiting? There may be some parts of the mind that would rather not practice, and they put on the voice and the appearance of your inner critic. But you've got to take that role back and make it serve the Dhamma. So here you're talking to yourself about the breath. Talk to yourself about how well the mind is settling down with the breath. What can be done to fix the breath if they're not settling down together? What can be done to the mind? That's useful conversation, useful criticism. And finally, feelings and perceptions. We have our old perceptions that we keep plastering onto things, but those can be changed. The Buddha gives us so many useful perceptions to apply. Think of all the different skilled craftspeople that the Buddha recommends that you imitate. A good cook, a good archer, a good soldier, even a good elephant, a good horse, a well-trained horse. You think about the trained animals. They don't start out trained. It takes a while for them to get used to being trained. But then they develop those abilities. They can do it. If animals can do it, why can't you? Think about the nun, Sister Dantika, who spent the whole day meditating in the forest without getting good results. She comes out of the forest and sees an elephant with a trainer. The trainer says to the elephant, "Okay, give me your foot." The elephant lifts his foot in such a way that the elephant trainer can use the foot to get onto the elephant's neck. And the nun thinks, even animals can be trained. Why can't I? She's encouraging herself. So think in ways that urge, rouse, and encourage you, because you do have the potentials inside. There are potentials in the body in terms of the breath element, the water element, earth, fire. There are potentials in the mind, the potential for stillness and rapture. It's in this way that the perception of self, when it's skillful, can actually help you along the path. We hear so much about how the 5 aggregates lie beyond your control, but they're not totally beyond your control. If they were totally beyond your control, you wouldn't have the illusion that they were you or yours. As the Buddha points out, right concentration is made out of the 5 aggregates. You can control them to that extent, to give rise to concentration and stay there. It is possible. They have that potential. And it's not just the Buddha's aggregates, or Ajahn Mun's aggregates, or Ajahn Lee's aggregates. Your aggregates can be shaped as well. They have that potential too. So there are times when thinking about an independent self is a really useful idea, especially at times like this when the world is going crazy. You have to remind yourself that there are sources of goodness inside, and they're totally independent of things outside. We owe a debt to the Buddha for having shown us the way, and to that extent, we're totally dependent on admirable friendship. But we can take those lessons and use them to find the resources within ourselves so that our goodness can be independent of the situation around us. If we want true happiness, that's what we have to do. You can think about the heat wave, but don't make the heat wave an obstacle. You can think about the situation of the world at large, but don't make that an obstacle. You have pains in your body. Don't make them an obstacle. There's a way around all those obstacles, and it can be found from within. those are some of the ways in which a sense of independent self is useful. So make the most of them. Just one person. Ajahn Suwat used to like to say that with all the people in the world, you have only one person, yourself, for which you're responsible. You may have members of the family, other people you have connections with, but you can't really be responsible for their actions. Our problem is that many of us are not even responsible for our own actions. We let our behavior depend on other people. If they treat us nicely, we treat them nicely. If they don't treat us nicely, we're going to get back at them. That's placing all the blame on them and denying our agency. But we're not here for a blame game. We're here to figure out why we're suffering. And it comes from our actions. Other people can do really bad things, but the fact that we're suffering from their bad things comes from our own lack of skill. This is why, when we meditate, we close our eyes. We're not out there looking at the world. We're looking into the mind. First, give the mind a good place to stay so you can look at it well. Try to get to know your breath really well. Settle in. As the Buddha said, leap upward or leap in. The word can be translated either way. Pakandati. Leap up at the breath. Leap into the breath. Grow confident in the breath. Settled in the breath. Absorbed in the breath. Resolved in the breath. You want to get the mind really firmly established here, implanted here, so that you can watch it carefully. If it's slipping off into the past, slipping off into the future, it's hard to watch. When it's all gathered right here, it's a lot easier to watch. So, bring it right here. Settle in right here. This is your place, right now. As to what is happening in the world, let that go. Because that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is looking after your mind, because that's the source of all your actions. And your actions, of course, are the source of whether you're going to suffer or not. So, you want to look here really carefully and have a strong sense of your own responsibility. This is why the Buddha doesn't have you throw away your sense of self too quickly. We read so much about not self, not self, not self. Some people even interpret it as no self. The Buddha never said that. But he does talk about making yourself your own mainstay, making yourself your own, basically, prosecutor. You're looking after your actions, and if you're doing something that's really not right, you've got to tell yourself, this is not right. Other people can give you some ideas about what's right and wrong, and can point out mistakes in your behavior. But you're the one who's watching all the time, or at least can be watching all the time. So take advantage of that fact and have a strong sense that you're responsible for your actions and you're going to benefit from acting skillfully. So you've got three basic kinds of self right here: the producer, the consumer, and the commentator or the observer. You want to train them all well, because who else are you going to be able to depend on? The path is not going to happen on its own. You can't sit back and say, may all the path factors come together. You have to do the factors. After all, you're doing your aggregates right now. You're doing your feelings. You're doing your perceptions, your thought fabrications, your consciousness, You've even been doing your sense of the body. This is why the Buddha said that all of the aggregates depend on the fourth one, fabrications. That's what takes the potentials coming from your past actions and turns them into your present experiences. So, you're playing a huge role right here. You have to be very clear about that and accept responsibility for what you're doing. Think about the Buddha's instructions to Rahula on looking at his intentions before he acted, looking at the action while he was doing it to see what results were coming, and then looking at the results over the long term. In each case, he uses the phrase, "This action I want to do, this action I'm doing, this action I have done, I. Assume responsibility. Have a strong sense that this is your range where you really can make a difference. The world outside can be totally insane. There's a lot out there that we can't do anything about. So you focus on the areas where you can do something. The prime area is right here in the heart. So focus your attention here. Bring the heart and mind to the breath and watch it very carefully. If there's anything disturbing the mind, just let it go. As the Buddha said, try to be committed to relinquishment because it's so easy to follow a thought as it sprouts, you might say. Little thoughts come sprouting up here and there. You want to look carefully. Where is this one going to take me? Where's that one going to go? If you look at it out of curiosity or out of desire for entertainment, you've got to change that attitude. We tend to think that the more entertainment we have inside, the more thoughts we have inside, the wealthier we are. But again, the Buddha says, the mind can show some of its potentials only when you let go of its little entertainments, its worries, its doubt about things. Allow it to be here, present for what's actually happening, right here, right now. If you're going to fashion anything, and of course you're fashioning things all the time, fashion a state of concentration. You've got the elements, you've got the breath, which can lead to feelings of pleasure or pain, and you've got your awareness and all the mental events that go along with trying to stay focused. We were reading today about all the things that Vain Sariputta saw in his states of concentration, decision, perception, intention, attention. So bring all these things, all your mental faculties, right here. You don't have to sort them out by name. Just have a sense that everything you're thinking about, everything you're feeling, everything you're interested in, is all right here. Try to maintain that sense of fully focused awareness, and you'll see things you didn't see before, because everything is gathered right here. In this way, you take your sense of responsibility and you develop it in the most skillful way, reminding yourself that if you don't do this, nobody's going to do it for you. And if you don't do it now, you don't really know how much longer you're going to have to do this, how much more time you have. But you do have this moment right here, right now. So give this moment the attention it deserves, and be ruthless in cutting away anything that would pull you away. Have that kind of determination. We were also reading today about Pukusati, who became a non-returner very shortly before he died. The Buddha may have sensed, as he was teaching Pukusati, that Pukusati didn't have much more time. So he taught him about determination. Determination is basically having one set of desires that you really focus on. You'll have to do battle with other desires that might pull you away, but you maintain this sense of focus on this is what you really want, This is where you're going to stay. This is what you want to bring into being. A state of concentration where you can see the mind clearly. You figure out what you're doing that's skillful, what you're doing that's not skillful, and you sort things out with no sense of nostalgia, no sense of attachment, but with a clear sense that what you do matters. So you want to be careful about what you're doing right now. That requires your full attention, all of your mental faculties. With that kind of concentration, you're bound to change things in the mind. This is the message of the Four Noble Truths. We've been acting in ways that lead to suffering. We've got to change the way we act, which means you can't simply wish for the path to come together. You have to take responsibility. So, yes, you are doing this, and yes, you will benefit from it, and you're the one who's going to pass judgment so that you can do it better and better. There will come a point where you don't need these senses of you anymore. But that's pretty far down the path. The sense of I am is one of the last fetters to go. But even though it may be a fetter, you find that you can use it if you approach it skillfully. When it's finally done its work and you can let it go, it's not out of dislike or fear or a sense of obligation that someone else told you. You have to let go of your sense of self. You've taken it as far as it can go. It does what it needs to do, and then you don't need it anymore. That's when you can let it go, because you found something a lot better. So this is the meaning of Ajahn Suwat's statement. You have just one person that you're responsible for. You develop it in the direction of where the sense of that one person will eventually drop away because you don't need it anymore. But in the meantime, as long as you need it, use it well.